Hi, everybody. This is Bill from Billboard Comics, and we are now going to talk about another aspect of my youth that I'm looking back on, back when I was a kid, like back when kid comics ruled the newsstand. Um, Now, of course, this is from my own personal experience and my own field view. Uh, there might be people who are older than me who were around from the '60s, back when you had even more kids comics back then that you could choose from, even Classics Illustrated and stuff like this. I'm just talking about like the fact that like nowadays it's hard pressed to find any comic book exclusively devoted to kids out there, and 9 times out of 10, if they were devoted to if there are kids comics, they are um, a TV adaptation of a cartoon or a TV show or something like that. Very little along the lines of original product. But back when I was a kid, back in the '70s, um, it kind of it is more open and there's more actually stuff available for you. There's like about 4 or 5 major publishers that specialize exclusively, more or less, in kids comics or comics aimed for all ages. Um, I'm going to go through this now, and I'm using like June of 1975 as my touchstone for this segment. That's when I believe I bought my first comic book, or at least the first comic I remember buying. It was Detective Comics 451. I will be doing another video on that in here at some point in the future. But if you uh, be on the lookout for that if you're so inclined. Um, but that's at the same time I bought that comic book. I remember buying a Dennis the Menace comic book, and Joey was featured on it. And as I said before on numerous other videos that I've done on this site, I'm a big fan of the Mike's Amazing World comic books. It's a comprehensive database, and one of their features is a newsstand segment where you can actually find what books were on the stands as the same time as your favorite book, or your month you were born, or even goes down to the day you were born if you want to like get that kind of deep and in depth with it. Um, so I went on there trying looking for the one on one with Dennis DeMenace. Uh, 3 were published by Fawcett, a Golden Age publisher that was pretty much kneecapped by DC, who sued them over their Captain Marvel character, only to end up like selling the character to DC Comics, and eventually their entire stock of characters to DC Comics later on. But they were the main publisher of the Dennis the Menace comic books. They put out 3 that month, and none of them really resembled. One was focused on Joey, but had a white cover on it. But I seem we remember a green cover, and they do have one with a green cover, but it doesn't seem to be focused all entirely on Joey. Um, so I'm gonna have to bear more investigation about that at some point in time. Um, but looking through that time there, I was just amazed by the amount of like kids comics there were there. Um, like I said, there's like a lot of it had to do with licensed material, but a lot of them had like a lot of original concepts in there too. Um, uh, but it was dominated at the time by 2 main characters. Uh, these were the Yankees and the Red Sox, the Hatfields and McCoys, um, the Jets and the Sharks of the era. Um, One was Archie and his line of comic books, and the other one was Richie Rich and his line of comic books. Both pretty much dominated the market share when it came to family-friendly fare at the time. Um, at the time, like in it was June 1975, um, Archie had about 24 comic books published on there, and Richie Rich had um, 12 comic books to his name, but also had another 8 comic books done for other characters, which I'll get into later. But first, let me go in with Archie. Do a tale of the tape, if you will, between these 2 titans of toddler art. Um, I'm sorry about that. Archie was created in 1941. He first appeared in Pep Comics number 22, um, and eventually became one of the most popular feature of the company. And he basically took up the entire publishing arm of it. He wasn't the first teen hero to appear in comic books. If you really want to get down to basics about it, that would probably been Howard Teen, who made his debut in 1919 in the comic strips, and also made some appearances into the actual physical comic books over the years. He was the first teen protagonist, and who would live through their kind of life, like like watching his adventures. And there are numerous others all the way through the Depression era and everything like that had focus on teen heroes. It was especially big in comic book strips, but and some carried over to the comic books, but nobody quite captured the nation's attention or the comic book reader's attention quite like Archie. Archie was by far and away like the neutron bomb of teen characters. Um, he changed the world of comic books ever since then and became an iconic part of the comic book landscape. He's still being published in many forms today. I just did a review for the site on this. I might put a link to it over here if you really, really want to look at it, of a new book with a new story in it. He is still active today. He's still around, and that's one thing you could say the advantage he has over Richie Rich, who kind of fade away into dustbins of memory. But like I said, there's like 24 different books about Archie that came out in June 1975. You had the main Archie line. Then you had Archie and Me, Archie Annual Digest, Archie at Riverdale High, Archie, actually Archie Color Series, which was called Archie, Archie's Girls, Betty and Veronica, Archie's Joke Book, Archie's Pals and Gals, Archie's Parable, which was an odd one published through I don't know if it's an imprint of Archie or a side license of Archie called Spire Comics, which is dedicated to more Christian fare. Which, if you want to think about how wholesome and it's kind of funny. Like a little sidebar. Nowadays, the most expensive Archie comics you get either have like lewd kind of innuendo, or it has like the lascivious like bathing suit covers, or Betty or Veronica on bathing suits, and a bunch of people who are really into that kind of thing paid top dollar to get those covers, as if those fake drawn teenagers would have anything to do with them. I guess somehow they figured, since it's Betty and Veronica on the comic book page, it's less squicky. I never got that. That's my sidebar. And if you do, it doesn't seem to be hurting anyone. You live your own life. Just, as long as it doesn't happen in real life and you go after teenagers in your real life, taking pictures of them in their bikinis, that's fine. This took a real weird kind. I apologize for that. What else do they have? Archie's TV Laugh Out. I just loved that title. It just seems like they have so much in there just to try. That's like one of the first SEOs before SEOs were even thought of. Let's put as much words up there to try to get as much possible as we could possibly can people in. Hey, you like TV comics? You like laughing? You like Archie? Let's get them all on the title. And you had Betty and Me, Everything's Archie, Josie and the Pussycats, Jughead, Laugh Comic, Life with Archie. A personal favorite of mine. I wasn't a big Archie guy, but I loved this book when I was a kid, Little Archie. Maybe because it dealt with a younger Archie, more appropriate to my age at the time. Then you had Madhouse Comics. Then you had the original comic book that he started in, Pep, which is still going on. Then you had Reggie and Me. Then you had Reggie's Wise Guy Jokes. Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, which is arguably the second most famous character to come out of this of the Archie universe. I'd say she gives Josie a run for her money because she had that whole TV series starring Lisa Joan Hart back in the 90s. And then That Woken Boy, which I thought was a savvy way of Archie to try to counter program against Archie. Somebody coming into thing, like a kid with this like 25 cents or 40 cents, saying, "I I I I want to get a teenage superhero, a teenage uh, comedy series, but I can't stand Archie. I don't want Archie. I want to get that Wilkin Boy. That looks fun. I'll get that." Not realizing that's actually all owned by Archie, but apparently, doing the research into that, that Wilkin Boy is the cousin of Jughead, so he is part of the extended supporting cast of Archie. And that only strikes the uh, the surface of the number of titles that um, Archie was publishing at the time. Um, this was a mix of bi-monthly and monthly comic books. But the next month, a whole other batch of new comic books came in, and that expanded the line to about like maybe 40 or 50 books. Like for instance, like Reggie's Wise Guy's Jokes was not published next month, but a joke book for Jughead was. So um, that it shows the grip upon it. And looking back on it, it just amazes me, like the fact that like um, Archie was able to put out this amount of content and output, um, just to focus around one character. Um, they didn't really have anything else on there like they could anything. At one time, they had a superhero line, and several times before and after the 1975, they tried to revamp it. But back in the 40s, it was when it was known as MLJ. It had like a whole bunch of comic book characters in it, not just Archie, and like it was more prominently on like the Shield or the Fly, I believe, or like you know the Hangman and stuff like that. There's all kinds of other stuff like this. It was a regular comic book company, and then Archie just exploded and like obliterated both of them, all everyone there, and they're like in a different universe, Archie might be a footnote in history, and we'd be like covering, seeing movies and TV shows based around the Fly. Um, who knows? Maybe that's in some kind of multiverse that's happening. But it at this point, it is pretty much all Archie all the time, and know, or Archie's supporting cast. And you think like 40 books every 2 months, it's not that big of a feat. Like DC did it like probably 40 or 50 1 month with all their characters, and Marvel same thing. But they had a variety of characters in it. You had Black Panther, Captain America, Superman, Spider Man. Well, I'm crossing the streams there. You had Spider Man, X Men, Captain America, Fantastic Four, and a whole bunch of other ones. Over at DC, you had Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, and all those other ones. You had all a wide diversity and wide array of different characters. Archie was all Archie, or Archie's side of things, and like you had it's like a true monopoly of like the resources of Archie Comics, and it's just amazing to think at that time that's he was like probably wasn't at the maybe not at the height of his powers, but he always had like a nice little fiefdom over the side where he was able to actually be a success and keep on going. And now I don't think he has a regular ongoing series out yet. Hopefully they'll change that in the near future. Um, but he's now teaming up with Jane Silent Bob and the Punisher and the Predator and stuff like that. He was a but that was great. But his main competitor at the time was Richie Rich. Richie Rich is slightly younger than he is, both in the comic books, which he's portrayed as being like a 10-year-old boy, and also in terms of creation. He made his first appearance in 1953 in a copy of Little Dot #1, I believe it was. Um, at one point at time, they were pumping up to 50 titles featuring him alone. Just for this time, like I said, they had like 12 things there. He had his main title, Richie Rich. He had Richie Rich and Jackie Jones, I believe. Jackie Jokes, I don't know the Jackie Joker. Ah, there it is. Yeah, my mind's going crazy. Yeah, it was kind of like a spin-off, kind of like kid comedian. Um, Richie Rich Cash, Richie Rich Dollars and Cents, Richie Rich Fortunes, Richie Rich Gems, Richie Rich Gold and Silver, Richie Rich Millions, Richie Rich Riches, Richie Rich Vault of Mystery, Super Richie, and Harvey's Collector's Comics, which featured Richie Rich comic books in there. If there was a adjective or a synonym for money or cash or being rich, usually it's attached to a comic book after Richie Rich's name. Like I said, he had up to 50 books published, and similar to Archie, some of these were bi-monthly, and the next month they were replaced with a whole different set of issues. So he had like more than just these 12 series done. He had maybe close to 20 series altogether between the 2 months. And that's amazing at the time. Uh, I if I have to be really honest, now if I had to choose between, if I had a gun to my head and or my family's life's in danger, if I had to pick one to read for the rest of my life, I'd pick Archie, just because I just I that's just the way I was. But when I was a kid, back this, I was like 4 years old, um, which I know I can't remember what I had for lunch today. I can't remember what Jackie Joker's name was, and I wrote it down like 10 minutes ago. But I remember like a comic book I bought back in 1975. But I digress. Maybe because I was a kid, and I was also like kind of like not exactly like for some point of the time in my childhood, I was middle class, and then I became lower class. Um, the idea of having so much money I didn't know what to do with, that I could actually like have a solid gold bathtub, or be able to have a helicopter pilot on beck and call to take me to my baseball games, seemed like a really great idea. When you grow up without any money, seeing stories, telling stories of people who have money seems like a really really fun thing to read. That's probably why I was into him back then. Um, but where Richie Rich, which was published by Harvey Comics, differed from Archie is that Harvey actually had other characters besides Richie Rich to choose from, notably Casper. During this month, it came out with Casper's Ghostland, number 8. Next month, it would have two Casper books, including Casper the Friendly Ghost, his main title. There's 2 Hot Stuff books, The Little Devil. Um, yes, yes, all the people who were worried, I guess, were getting distracted about like the ongoing D&D, didn't realize there's actually a kids book featuring actual minion of Satan being sold to their kids behind their backs. Um, but Hot Stuff had won his main title, and Hot Stuff's creepy uh, castle, I believe, or something like that. They also published Little Lotta in this month, and they also we're still publishing Little Dot. She came in the next month. Also published the Sad Sack volume, like the military kind of like the uh, prototypical Beetle Bailey kind of poking fun at military-esque book, and he had 2 on. He had Sad Sack and Sad Sack Laugh Special. Then you had a spin-off from Casper called Spooky. He had 2 books out, Spooky 146 and Spooky Spookathon, I believe, number 59. Spooky Town, I believe. Oh, Spooky Town. Gotta learn how to write. But as you can see, like he had 8 additional characters, several having many other incarnations. Another one that wasn't on this, but had a book that came out the next month, was Wendy the Good Witch. So Harvey had a more robust portfolio of characters to choose from. Um, which, if you like, if I was like say old enough to be putting bets on anything back in that time, I wasn't. And you told me, went back in time, like told me to go, hey, in 50 years from now, who is going to be around still? Archie Comics or Richie Rich? I probably picked Richie Rich because they had like a Harvey, or actually Archie Comics or Harvey Comics, I should say. I say Harvey Comics because they had more characters to choose from, and they also did well. But in truth, Harvey didn't last out barely made it into the 80s. It kind of like ceased publications for a long hiatus from 1982. Came back briefly in like the 90s. It published like a New Kids in the Block comic book. It published a Back to the Future comic book. It published a bunch of other kind of like comic books, but it was never the same and never reached the same heights. And I don't think it's an actual going concern right at this point now, which is a shame. But yeah, so it's like kind of like they both had their days in the sun. I mean, like Richie Rich actually had a movie made out of him starring Macaulay Culkin. So and that was way after he faded from the public consciousness. So he has that going for him, which is nice. But Archie had a whole bunch of like cartoons and uh, like live action stuff. Um, Usually when Archie went to live action stuff, they kind of like changed around so it's not kid friendly anymore. I remember even back like that cheesy kind of TV movie, Archie Returned to Riverdale, which the whole premise was like Archie returning to Riverdale as adults. Um, I believe Lauren Holly was in that. She played Betty. I think one scene had her walking around in lingerie to kind of entice Richie. Like she's trying to turn him on and seduce him. Which didn't appear in any of my Archie comic books when I was reading as a kid. So then you have, of course, Riverdale, which goes way above and beyond being all kinds of adult content in there, murder, sex, and all that, all the trimmings there. So um, yeah, so it seems like Archie gets his freak on when he hits the live action. But there were two biggest things at the time, they still have like a certain kind of um, like uh, like cultural cachet today. I mean, Archie, like I said, the Riverdale just ended like a year or two ago, and Richie Rich usually, like, if they have like a demeaning cartoon to make about any kind of millionaire, they kind of like draw him in the style of Richie Rich and have him do that. So um, it was interesting time to be around to have those both in the heyday and fighting for shelf space or rack space in the local drugstores or convenience stores. But they weren't the end all be all of kids' books back at that time. Other books that came out there seems like notable other comic book companies had um, a huge line, or a majority of the line was family friendly or kid friendly, but most of them dealt with like in the um, world of licensed properties. They didn't have any much homegrown uh, uh, comics like characters to choose from. Let's start off with like saying Charlton. Charlton had it wasn't exclusively kids comics. They also had like some like Fighting Marines or uh, stuff like that. And E-Man was being published at this time. So they had other stuff besides kids comics, but they published like Beetle Bailey and Sergeant Snorkel from the Beetle Bailey comics strip. They made comic books out of them. Another comic strip they adapted was Blondie. They also had the license to the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, so that means they had Flintstones, which is Flintstones and Pebbles, and Dino. They both had issues coming out there, along with the Great Gazoo. Um, and they also had other ones called Speed Buggy and Wheelie and the um, Chopper Bunch. Um, these are both two, I believe, Hanna-Barbera properties that involved uh, talking motor vehicles. One, of course, was a dune buggy, and the other one was a whole set of motorcycles. Um, the mid '70s was the golden era for uh, talking um, or intelligent motor vehicles between these two and say Herbie the Love Bug and other stuff. Um, and just remember, Speed Buggy ran, walked, so Kit the Knight Rider could run. Be sure to tell your kids that, or your parents that, or whatever. Um, Another long-running comic book company that was still going on there was Gold Key. Gold Key also had some stuff outside of the comic books. They're still publishing Turok and Doctor Spectre and the Mighty Samson, I believe it was. But um, they had two of the major licenses of today. They had Warner Brothers and they had Disney. They also had license with adapting Filmation stuff and a bunch of other stuff. Um, they did their comics. There was Beep Beep, the Roadrunner, which is Warner's. Bugs Bunny, obviously Warner's. Daffy Duck, again Warner's. Did a comic book based on Fat Albert. Fat Albert was a Filmation property they adapted. Um, they had their Golden Comics Digest, which was a compilation of different comic book strips from different companies. Um, they also had a rather long-standing one called Little Lulu, which I believe was based on and also a magazine like comic strip kind of thing. Um, uh, had Looney Tunes. They had new Terrytoons. This was issue number 33, which featured Heckle and Jekyll. Um, they had Tweety and Sylvester, another Warner's. They had Underdog, which I don't know I don't know if that was like Filmation. I know it wasn't Warner's, but it was another like licensed one based on a cartoon. Uh, it had two original ones that I can't find. I did a little research on that. I couldn't find any like comic like a cartoon that inspired it. One was called Little Monsters, um, and the other one was called um, Wacky Adventures of Cracky. The one was of course the first one was of course based on like child monsters, and the other one was looks like Adventures of a pirate parrot. Um, I couldn't find anything that they were adapted from, so they might have been original properties that Gold Key had, um, or they might be like a minor character of Disney or Warner Brothers that I'm not familiar with, or Filmation. Uh, Google is not the only. We put little monsters into Google. You get the 1989 movie with Howie Mandel and Ben Savage, which I know it's not this. Um, but then they also had the whole Walt Disney line of comic books. They did like at least eight or nine comic books they published just from Walt Disney alone. They had uh, one based on they had the Walt Disney Comics Digest, more of an anthology of different Disney properties. They also had one for Mickey Mouse, for Moby Duck, um, Walt Disney Showcase. They also had like another issue of Walt Disney Showcase. I put on here twice, maybe I got that screwed up. Super Goof. They had Uncle Scrooge. They had the classic long-running um, Walt Disney Comics and Stories. So they were pretty well set with their licenses, and that's why Gold Key was around for ages and published so many books and stuff like this because they locked like two of the biggest companies up for a long time. Nowadays, you're hard pressed to find them anywhere. You do see the occasional uh, Warner Bros. From DC Comics, um, and like the main reason why you don't see like uh, these comics going outside of like Marvel or DC is because Warner Brothers owns DC, so obviously they're going to go to um, DC, um, like DC Comics to publish the books. I mean, there's a long running Looney Tunes books. I don't know if it's still being published. I haven't checked uh, uh, the submissions, the solicitations recently for it, but for a long time they were doing it there, and they had like a whole bunch of crossovers between like Harley Quinn and Gossamer and stuff like that, and Elmer Fudd and Lex Luthor. Um, so they own the characters. So if they're going to go to Warner Brothers. Disney owns Marvel, so if Disney is going to license their characters out to make commemorative variant covers for a superhero comic, it's going to be to Marvel, not to any other one. Um, so that kind of ends any possibility of a company like Gold Key coming around again, who specialized in just taking all these properties that are popular and having them under one roof and publishing them under one printing press. I don't think it'll ever happen again. But I digress. Um, Also, during the time, Fawcett was still going on, and like I said earlier, they published three Dennis the Menace comic books: Dennis the Menace and His Friends, Dennis the Menace bonus magazines, number 141 and 142. One was the 142 was dedicated to Joey, and the other one I think was dedicated to Margaret, two of the supporting characters there. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much all their outfit. But they're still going like in 1975, and hanging on to that Dennis the Menace license as strong as they could. Um, but as you could see, the reason why I listed all these issues numbers is just to show you like as a kid, it's like a candy store. It was like all you could eat buffet. You don't like anything from this segment? Walk a couple of feet and get something from that segment. There's so much to choose from. Like, gee, I really wish I could follow the adventures of Fat Albert further than just on Saturday mornings. Well, here you could. Um, you know, you know, I wish the Flintstones featured more on Dino. I really love that character. Well, the cartoon might do it, but you have a comic book here that'll do it for you. Um, So this is like a for me, it was a golden era of being a buying comic books as a kid, because there's so much for me to choose from, so much offered for me, and so much that I actually have fond memories of. Uh, and like I said, did I see all of these on the stands? Obviously not, because these are like dozens and dozens of comic books, and there's like comic racks only have like room for maybe 60 comic books, so they had to pick and choose. They might have like the one Walt Disney one and one of maybe the Flintstones and maybe the Bugs Bunny one, and all the rest were gone by the wayside. Unless you had a really big newsstand, you weren't getting all these comic books, so you had to pick like the while you could pick and choose amongst all you wanted to. Usually, it's basically like one major one from like each company. Like, you know, I could get like a couple Archies, Archie or Jughead, or like Archie and Me, or Archie's gals Betty and Veronica, or if Richie Rich, I could have Richie Rich and maybe Casper, and maybe another two Richie Rich stuffs. So you did have a variety amongst all the different companies published, but you didn't have all access to all of them at all time, as I recall. Because like it's I would go to different places. I'd go to like one drugstore and they'd have like the Chopper and the Wheelie Bunch, which I remember liking when I was a kid. I liked this like when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And another one, I go to five other ones, they wouldn't have it. Um, so it was a unique time for this. And it's time that we'll probably seldom ever come back to. I mean, there are kids comics out there. I know my local comic store, IA Comics, has a nice little section, fully stocked, well stocked, with a whole bunch of kid-friendly comic books. But it's not the same. I mean, like there's certain the in-house IA Comics is there. The Tiny Titans is usually there. Usually they have like certain ones based on cartoons like Adventure Time or My Little Pony or something like that. But they don't really. There's not really as much selection of original stuff and also of quality like animated stuff as they had when I was a kid. So that's one of the reasons why I have it a little bit better than you kids today there. So um, yeah. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. Um, So, do you remember getting comic books as a kid? Are you old as me and remember that? Were you younger than me and remember like the second incarnation of Archie and you know running across country to pick out the latest issue of New Kids on the Block because you're a humongous fan of them. Um, was there any ones I might have missed or any aspect I might have like not covered in this one? That's what the comment section there is for. Please, 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 if you made this far and you are interested in this topic and you had, I wish you covered that. Put in the comments. Sign your name to it. Give you credit for it because like I said, I'm pretty old. I might not know what I had for breakfast this morning, but I do remember something about comic books when I was a kid. Um, but if you like this, thumbs up are free, and they really help with the algorithm and help me you know, get this uh, video line spread across the entire interwebs. So that would really help. Subscribe. So this is a regular feature, and it's going to be going for quite a number, like at least another 3 or 4 months, probably even longer. Um, so if you want to do that, just if you like any like walking down memory lane with me, please by all means, you know, subscribe and hit the bell to be notified, and yeah, and share this with people you might know. And also, if you have any ideas for this site, for this segment, stuff that you might remember as a kid, and you want my opinion on it that I might have forgotten or might not realize, I'm usually every 2 or 3 months for this one, I'm going down and sitting down like, okay, what do I remember from when I was a kid that would be interesting to talk about? And so far I've been having no end of things to point out and figure out. But that might end sometime, and I really don't want this to end because I like talking to you guys. So if you have a topic that you want me to cover on this, put in the comments and suggest it. That would be great. I would be welcome it. Um, and if you want to get like a tip of the hat, um, I you know I will give you a tip of the hat because that's I'm not even making that much on this site right now at this point, so that's all I have to give to you. But you know I will go by your wishes and your demands. So that's all for this week. Next week we'll have another topic, but until then, uh, always remember keep on collecting.